took over. Can you make me a moderator, please? I can't hear you, Matt. Are you there? Can you guys hear me? There we go.
Hey.
Hey, can you make me a moderator?
I'd love to.
You son of a bitch. And then make Sarah one as well so she could bring people up if she wanted to.
Yeah.
Yay! And you're still muted, Sarah, just so you know. Still says mute.
All right. Now I'm good.
Okay. Cool. So we're streaming live on a Monday. Let's just make sure. Yeah, and our link in the event, I put the Clubhouse link, so hopefully people will show up this time. Let's see if we can invite anybody.
All right, I'm just going through and inviting some people now.
I'm just inviting everybody that I see. Oh, those guys are... All right, I invited a bunch of people. We'll see what happens if they show up.
All right.
So, yeah. Happy Monday, guys.
Happy Monday. It's a little different.
A little different. It's like usually we're ending the week, and this way we're starting the week off just with a bang.
That's right.
I like it.
So, over the weekend, we put up some posts across all the social media platforms, and we ran a little poll on should the feds legalize weed. And I was really surprised because we put up other posts on our other shows before, and you know, they get a couple views or whatever. This one was really kind of a hot topic, it seemed like. I mean, it's an obvious hot topic, but you know, we actually ended up having... LinkedIn was strong. We had like almost 40 votes there with a little over 1,300 views, and TikTok wasn't too far behind, a couple hundred views with about 30 votes. But the overall consensus, about 90% of the people said, yeah, the feds should legalize weed. But we all know that has certain ramifications with it. So I think that's really what we want to talk about here is like, what does that even mean? What does it mean if the feds deschedule? What does it mean if the feds decide to legalize it? Are they just going to take it over, or is like what's going to happen?
And I was saying before to Danny, I didn't vote because I'm still torn. You know, I'm in the legal cannabis industry. Of course, I want, you know, forward movement for the plant in general. I want, you know, overall access for everyone. But at the same time, I don't want to pay 55% for anything, like on taxes. So like I, you know, as a cannabis professional, I'm torn. So I'd love to hear, you know, how would you guys vote, both of you?
You know what the proposed tax rate is?
$1 million.
No, it's like 5 to 8%. So right now you're paying what, county tax, local
it's like
tax,
28%,
right?
I think, is what total taxation is.
State tax, and then you want to tack on another 5 to 8% on top of that, and it's not going to end there, right?
Yeah, no. And they were saying it'd be increased annually, rising from 15 to 20 to 25, and starting in the 5th year, the tax would be a per ounce or per milligram of THC amount determined by the Secretary of Treasury. So some dude, most likely, is going to be, you know, regulating taxation based on THC percentage. So those types of things are making me pause, you know, and it's just, you know, where it doesn't make sense, a lot of it. It doesn't. And that, I mean, that's going to make a traditional market thrive, too, at the end of the day. You know, people aren't going to want to pay, like, a total of 50+% tax.
Jesus. What else is taxed like that?
Gas.
Yeah, gas. That's the question.
Especially here in California, right?
I mean, yeah, right.
I mean,
seriously.
To me, I would imagine that there'd be some, like right now the state has their hands all the way in it, right? And if the feds come in, they want to put their hands in there too. how do those people live in the same? How do they live together? Like, what does that even look like? Like, do the feds come in and say, yeah, states rights off the table. We're going to go ahead and do what we want to do now federally, and the state's going to get this, because maybe that's going to happen. Maybe the feds are going to be like, you know what, your overtaxation is not going to happen anymore. We're going to regulate it this way. There's interstate commerce. We're going to let the states determine the rules and regulations, but just like they do with alcohol. I mean, if we just follow alcohol, alcohol is transported across state lines, and alcohol is regulated by the state. Like Utah has its rules, Nevada has its rules. Everybody has its own rules for the state level, but it's federally regulated. And I think that's where we have to go. And I think you're going to see that 8 to whatever percent come out of the state's pockets. I think I would think that's how the feds would operate.
Danny, but I hate that idea. You look at how screwed up alcohol is.
Oh, yeah.
So the small microbrewery can't sell his stuff into Utah, right?
Sure.
Why? Because the big alcohol, right, has a control on it.
Sure.
And it's just a conglomerate of the big guys playing, and the little guys can't get there. So with cannabis being all little guys, right, especially as these new markets open, it changes the thing. So for me, it's like, how come we haven't talked about the medicinal values? You look at Schumer up there, and regardless how you feel about the guy, but he's talking about, decriminalizing it. Okay, so for the people that committed actual crimes, not the people that had medical reasons, that, hey, I got in here and my mom had epilepsy, or, my kid had this, or, my best friend's mom had stage 4 brain cancer, and I'm jamming Rick Simpson oil down her throat. We're not talking about that. And so when we are talking about criminal, we're going to let those guys go, but the guys that actually committed crimes with guns and all these other things around cannabis, it's like, well, I think
they earmarked, and Anthony, feel free to jump in anytime. You wouldn't be rude to cut us off. So, the reality is that I think it's the expungement of nonviolent cannabis offenders, right? People that were transporting, people that were, had a dispensary, a trap house, if you will, that got busted. I mean, Luke Scaramazzo is still serving a 29-year sentence, I think, for having a dispensary that was under Prop 215 in Fresno. And that guy's still in jail, right? And it's like, I think that's where you'd see, that's where I'd like to see. I mean, if you look at what New York did, right? New York wiped it clean. I think Illinois did the same thing, where they came in and they said, fine, we're going to expunge all these criminals' records, and we're going to release these prisoners. But there needs to be some repatriation too, because these people are coming out of jail with nothing. I think we need to level the playing field. And I think, what's really interesting that's happened since between the time we decided to talk on this and now is that Jackie McGovern is now running for governor of California, which would be a really interesting thing, because it'd probably be the first politician in place that had cannabis experience. But I'll stop there for now.
Well, there's so much, like you said, what is the drain on some of the social services, right? What's the drain on the healthcare system, right, that this is going to be? Because, people now getting out of prison, and I'm all for, like, hey, somebody got busted for, X amount, and, where at whatever state, Texas, right? They had a half ounce on them or an eighth on them, some personal use. Yeah, but I'm talking about some of the cartels and things like that, right? Those will get wiped away. And you look at, I read this law, the proposed federal legislation, and there's all kinds of amendments to the immigration law on, cannabis as being a controlled substance and things like that. So, I don't know how I feel on, it's okay to come into this country and then go do illegal things, and we're just going to say it's okay. So, it's really vague on some of that. But, those are all the questions. What's the benefits of the Fed legalizing it, other than banking?
I think criminal side. I think that's a very good point. And again, Anthony and John, welcome to the table. If you guys want to jump in, just hit your mics, and that means you want to talk. There you go, John.
Hey, John.
Hi guys. How's it going?
Good. Love to hear your thoughts on this.
What's up, John?
Nothing much. I mean, I think that, there's the obvious advantages of, having access to something like safe banking has to be included as part of the legalization. There's a concern here that the rise of federal legalization would probably cause a lot more harm to the overall culture that's developed around cannabis thus far than actual good. I think that it's a hard thing to weigh of, how do we legitimize this industry in the United States without having full federal legalization, while still preserving the culture, while still ensuring the people that blaze the trails within this industry are, not run over by the massive amounts of capital we're seeing pouring into our industry today. But I don't see another path forward beyond federal legalization that doesn't still end up with people who are entirely innocent being put in jail just because they're being hit with a federal charge because of some trumped up interstate commerce bullshit.
Yeah, and I think you bring up a good point, John. And I think when you have a passion for the plant, you look at it through that lens. So you're talking about community, you're talking about the actual, hard-hitting like repercussions and things like that. And I think not everybody, views it through that lens. So I think, for us, like I was saying, I'm on the fence. Like, I don't know if I want federal legalization necessarily because it's so clunky what was written into that. So many questions. I mean, even the fact that the FDA would have oversight on all this, I'm torn about that too. Like, yes, it goes into your body, but like it's a whole different beast,
Yeah. I mean, my major concern here is that I want to see like the improper prosecution of oftentimes underserved communities stop. I want to see organizations like the DEA and the FBI robbed of the tools to put down communities that are already historically oppressed. I mean, I think one of the best ways to do that is descheduling cannabis. Historically, that has always been used as a weapon to target minority communities and also low-income communities, and put them in jail for no other reason than because they grow or possess this plant. And that's where I really think my decision is made on whether federal legalization should happen or not is right there.
I think the crux of it, the crux in my mind is, does federal legalization accomplish what we all want it to, right? It's like, and I'm going to use a really weird comparison. Surfing, for example, has been a very organic core business for a long time. People have been pushing for the surfing in the Olympics. Same with skateboarding. Now it's actually there. Is it doing what it's supposed to do? And so, to your point, with regards to the DEA and the FBI getting clawed back on their war on drugs, I think I think the problem is the thing's DOA anyways because it's a Democratic proposal and it's not going to pass the Senate. But when it comes down to actually enacting these laws, we have to have the politicians from both sides of the space be willing to bring something to the table besides a bunch of pork, right? Because what's going to get put into this legislature is going to include things that don't have anything to do with cannabis. And it's not going to actually help fund any sort of, just like the California lottery. Where's that money? Like our schools are still running, donation events to just fund the basic teacher supplies. So I just, as much as I'd love to see in like the holistic piece of it be legalized so that we can like really expand our reach and really get in with some, like states like Oregon and even Washington that are overproducing for their actual population, like be able to export. I just think that, for lack of a better word, politicians are going to fuck this thing up considerably.
100%.
Great point. It's not about that, right? It's not about that at all. It's about big ag. It's about big pharma, big tobacco, big alcohol, like all these guys, and the money.
Yeah. Oh, it's always about the money. But I think the thing that was different was, in the past, the majority leader, they would bring up bills and it wouldn't pass because the majority leader was Republican, but now he actually brought it to the table. So I think that is a big difference that I was shocked as shit when like he kind of came out, a little bit out of nowhere with this. But I think that's what's different. And they also created the Cannabis Freedom Alliance in partnership, and they've been working with a bunch of stakeholders. So it seems like that they're doing things a little differently than in the past, but we'll see.
Anthony or Keith, what are your guys' thoughts? Whoever wants to jump in first.
Yeah, so myself, I've been listening to you guys. The thing that pops in my head is that our country is in a state of printing money to solve problems, right? And when you guys have talked about taxation rates related to cannabis, and then obviously like the local city governments and counties and states, and they're regulating, and they have their tax rates, and then here comes a potential Fed proposal of how it could work, and knowing that it's just going to go higher, and it's going to throw out the small guys and leave it to just big corporations, which is just traditionally what we do. My head kind of goes into this place of, I believe we looked at cannabis as a way to solve a lot of the like fiscal type problems in our like local governments, all the cities and counties all throughout California. I saw it all over. It's like, well, we're running out of deficit, so let's get all the money from cannabis, and they just believe it's like a done deal, but it's really just business, right? So I think that I guess it's more of a thought than anything, that it's a fundamental thing for us and our how we look at money. And since we're going through this time frame through COVID and all this, and which is like the Great Reset, now we're gonna have it's gonna take time to level it all out, let this money printing continue, and I don't know, federal legalization. I don't know that it really matters. Would be my thought.
I kind of agree with that. I think you know, we're already, you know, Prop 64 was, you know, everyone was so hyped on. I remember, oh, we're gonna get recreational, and it's just funny. I just on the radio heard the other day that they're pushing medical marijuana again. They're like, hey, get your medical card, you get better deals, and you know, all this other stuff. And it's like, not a lot of people actually have their card, you know, anymore. And a lot of licenses that are being issued are only being issued on a recreational level. And so it's one of those things where, oh, it's gonna be so good, it's gonna be recreational, and it really T-boned the industry. It actually increased the traditional market, the original illegal market. Yeah, 100%. Like, now people are growing safer cannabis illegally than they were before, because let's face it, before we didn't have all these rules and regs, but like, they're still getting their stuff tested. They're still taking it to labs and getting it tested and then just selling it without all the taxation. And, you know, will that come to an end? I mean, we saw some pretty sizable busts recently in Riverside and then up, you know, in different parts of the state. But it's like, there's so many people that are hooping up their backyards that are growing 100, 200 plants that are satisfying the need within their own neighborhood, that it's going to be nearly impossible to catch all these people, you know?
And just like with politics, like it's a big chess game, right? And the chess game around cannabis has been happening. It started with hemp, right? Years and years ago. And it was based on oil, right? Oil companies and manufacturing a lot of different textiles that they kiboshed it. Now we're in like, what is it, like 60, 70 years, 80 years of this time frame to get to this point. And I think the, proposition that went through was the 64. It was just a stage in the game, right? So now we're here. Everybody, like most of the people that voted yes, I believe in their head, they're like, it ain't perfect, but it's a step in the right direction, because you just got to make a move forward, right?
Absolutely. And I think, you know, at the very least, at least it's opening up a bigger conversation too.
That's it.
And, you know, we just need to keep pushing and talking about it. And, you know, nothing that comes out of the government is ever perfect. This is very far from it, but, you know, the conversation is happening. So I'll take that.
So, you know, back to the conversation about, you know, the fact that you're seeing the illegal market actually, you know, come back in a lot of ways after Prop 64. You know, I think that's something that's an inevitability for people who have, you know, consumed since long before there was any sort of legitimacy or legality to the industry. Is that people are, you know, going to effectively have networks where they can seek out quality product for lower prices and lower levels of taxation. I don't think that's probably where you're going to see a lot of, you know, growth in the industry is from those people. It's probably more likely that you see growth from people who are being exposed to it now that have never actually felt comfortable with cannabis in the past. And those are the people who aren't going to necessarily even know any better than to pay the price that's being charged in these storefronts for these, higher price consumer packaged goods. And I think that's where a lot of the legitimate market's going to come from. But I think it's going to be incredibly difficult for anyone to ever actually kill off the gray market or black market entirely, unless you can just do a pricing scheme that's basically a loss leader.
Yeah, it's impossible to do that, because you're gonna have regular people growing their own weed, and I think it comes down to like the COVID pandemic. You have it's a perfect example to look at, because they're like, okay, about 50% of the people went and got the vaccine. So about 50% of the people are like, we believe in you, government. We're trusting your lead. The other 50% are like, screw you. There's no way in hell I'm getting that, and we're gonna go do our healthcare. And I believe they look at it from a different perspective, and I think those are the type of people that, through with cannabis, are like, well, we're gonna holistically take care of ourselves, and not trust just because, well, the government says this, because they've been proven liars, I guess.
Right. And Keith's been waiting patiently. So Keith, you want to chime in here and unmute yourself?
Yeah, I just want to kind of make a couple of points. One, to kind of touch upon the point, Sarah, that you just recently made about, being kind of surprised with Schumer bringing the bill to the floor. Just my belief, at the end of the day, Democrats really didn't have a choice. Seeing as how, prior to Democrats having control of the Senate, and then, a few years before that, having control of the House, the argument has always been, oh, well, we can't get any bills heard. Well, you have Pete Sessions, who was in the House of Representatives out of Texas, who was blocking, literally every cannabis form of legislation that was coming through the House. And so the excuse was always, oh, well, we can't get anything, through the House or through the Senate because Republicans are blocking it. So with, Democrats being in control, like, there's literally no excuse as to why, a bill couldn't actually be, brought through and heard. So if, Democrats hadn't taken action, I think it would have definitely hurt them in the upcoming election next year, because they literally have no sort of excuse. When it comes to federal legalization needs to occur. I think it's a little bit more complex than what the average person realizes, though, from the standpoint of, I think a lot of people seem to think that, federal legalization is just going to, open up all this opportunity, for everybody, or, for a lot of individuals to, be able to get into the market and different things like that. When in actuality, really the only thing that federal legalization will do is just remove the barriers that prevent states from implementing infrastructure to set up, any sort of legal regulated industry. And the reason I'm saying that is because, at the end of the day, the federal government, once they, remove it from the schedule, legalize it, whatever they may do, it's still going to be up to the states to determine what that's going to look like in their state. So yes, you'll be able to have some form of interstate commerce, or at least you'll be able to take it across state lines. But if, I know people hate to compare the cannabis industry to the alcohol industry, but if you just look at the alcohol industry with regards to how it's, set up in every state, it's different. There are different nuances throughout each state. Some states, the state government owns liquor stores. In other states, there's a limitation on the number of liquor licenses or liquor stores that a company can own, and different things like that. So it becomes one of those things of, yes, once federal legalization occurs, we should celebrate it. But then we have to still focus at the state and local levels to make sure that, the appropriate legislation is being passed at the state and local level, so that, it's equitable, it's fair, and it's smart, and so on and so forth. So that's definitely, something that I think often that's not on people's radars. And then the, third point before I, hit mute is that at the end of the day, let's take away the negative stereotype or the stigma that's attached to cannabis. At the end of the day, the legacy market will never go anywhere. We don't think, when we think of farmers markets and things of that nature, where people are selling tomatoes and other crops that they may grow in their garden or, at home and so on and so forth. We don't think anything bad of that, but the legacy market is set up to address any inefficiencies in the market. And it just so happens that, because cannabis has this stigma attached to it, that we look at it as a bad thing, but just in fact, it's just really more so addressing the inefficiencies that will continue to exist in the market just due to the fact of, regulation, taxation, so on and so forth. I mean, there's just going to be some things that people aren't going to be able to produce in the legacy market, but at the same time, that's what the purpose of the legal market is for. So, we can't, or the government can't just think like, oh, we're going to be able to eradicate the legacy market. That's just not reasonable. I mean, we got grocery stores and we have farmers markets and, people that just sell and give away, things that they grow at home. So it's just, part of it is just, restructuring our thinking and our thought process, and just kind of figuring out, like, how do we just get smart legislation in place so that, the industry can thrive and, as many participants, whether it be through cultivation, processing, distribution, transportation, lifestyle services and products, can exist.
That's great. You made a million great points, Keith. And I think, especially on the local, state level, I always tell people, get involved. Go seek out the people you need to, align yourself with, because really that is what it's going to come down to. And also make sure you're in a good state, because there's a few that it's just going to be a trudge to get, acceptance in general.
Yeah. So I think that, in life, there's always counterpoints, right? The counterpoint to government is anarchism, right? And people doing things on the other side, outside of the government, not paying taxes, basically, right? Yeah. So the counterpoint to a regulated cannabis industry federally and, throughout the United States is the black market. So we're being shown that at this stage in the game, the regulated markets are not successful. I operate in the regulated market, right? Have a delivery business. And what I'd say is it is banging your head against the wall like no business I've ever seen before. It's the hardest to make money. It's the scrupulous nature of the people that come and regulate us, and how they really don't understand, but they're getting paid, so they're on the teat. It's like it makes it very difficult. And from my perspective, that counterpoint of that we get to look at is regulated market versus traditional market, and we're losing. And it takes time. I believe we still have like 10 years of this to get into a place where it actually works. And the sad thing is, the only way I believe it's actually going to work is to federally legalize it, to allow the big money to get in, so it's actually a real industry, which kind of puts all my friends out of business, including probably myself, right?
What state are you in? Sorry, Danny.
California.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I 100% agree. It's like, it's one of those things where something has to die off for the big money to come in, because they're not going to come in. And I think the biggest thing that you're saying without actually stating it is, like, big money can make more mistakes. Big money can glaze over. Big money can survive off a 10% margin. Big money can, basically outlive the organic people, the people that actually did this for a reason, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. That's exactly it. And yeah.
Well, I was going to say, I think, part of the challenge, from small business that you're seeing right now is, let's take, for example, 280E. That's literally just a function of the fact that of it being a Schedule I drug. So with federal legalization, that instantly goes away. The fact that, you can't get the opportunities for getting lending, from banks is slim to none, due to the simple fact that, banks are conservative. and they don't want to run the risk of, any federal charges. So they're holding off until then. So then, in addition to that, you're also, looking at the issue. So, the issue that occurred, properties that are located in green zones or in areas that have been properly zoned for cannabis businesses, the property value is being, the actual property value is not necessarily going up, but the selling prices are astronomical, but they're not true to the true value of the building. And so even if you were to go to a bank to get lending, you're not going to be able to get much because the value that the seller is selling for is not the actual true commercial value. So, there are a lot of things that are just kind of, thrown out of whack with regards to the limitations that have been imposed on the cannabis industry. And so some of those things will go away and open up opportunities as we, move towards legalization.
I think my biggest question is, and those are all, again, really great points because it really is complicated. I mean, I guess from like a real simple frame of mind, why does it have to be an all or nothing? Why can't it start with like a Safe Banking Act? And then why can't it get rid of 280E? I mean, it's like 280E is there to catch people like that are gambling or racketeering. I mean, that's like, they always rack you up on tax evasion versus what you're actually, you kill 100 people, but if you evade taxes for some reason, they'll throw all the murders out the window and they'll get you on a 280E. So what if we just started there? Why can't we baby step these things in? This is what is always amazing to me as politicians. They build these enormous bills to go in and like, there's always going to be something that's going to cause somebody to push back or want to add, oh, you want to add that? Well, I'm going to add this. And, and I think if we could, I think the biggest challenge we have is nobody really knows what they're doing on the top end with relation to the actual industry. I mean, you have people jump ship like Boehner and go in after banging on weed for I don't even know how many years, and then jumps in and all of a sudden he's a an advisor in the space. Advisor of what? How to get around stuff, who to talk to, who to grease the wheels of. So I think, why can't we just start on a basic level and just go from there? Why does it have to be this huge, enormous thing that probably is too clunky and too large to actually get through?
Yeah.
Well,
Go ahead.
I was going to say, to your point, Danny, it's really more so politicians are actually making it more complicated than what it is.
Sure.
Just due to the simple fact, if you just take it off the schedule altogether, guess what? You address 280E as well as banking, so there is actually no need for a Safe Banking Act or eliminating 280E. 280E was put in place. I don't know if it is.
Damn, he's about to drop knowledge.
Keith, you just broke up for a second, but go ahead.
There was actually a drug dealer who, and I think it was in the early 90s or something along those lines, who, which is often the case, wasn't actually caught in the act or something along those lines. And so he was being charged, for tax evasion, tax fraud, and he was, basically considered a business enterprise. So his counter argument to that was, well, hey, if you're saying that I'm a business enterprise, well, guess what? And it was for, selling cocaine or something. I forget exactly. He was like, well, I should be entitled to the business deductions that other business enterprises are entitled to. And so I can't remember if he won the case, but the result of that was like, hey, because at the end of the day, the government doesn't care how you make your money. If you're making money, they want their taxes. And so as a result of that, the federal government then came back with 280E to say, if you're dealing with, Schedule 1 narcotics, you will not be allowed to take certain business deductions. Hence why Schedule 1 is creating the problem for cannabis. So you remove it from Schedule 1, you no longer have to worry about 280E. And then the other point with the Safe Banking Act, literally because it's illegal at the federal level, banks do not want to touch it because they don't want to get hit with RICO charges and various other charges that could occur as a result of interstate commerce or sending money across state lines. So if it's not illegal at the federal level, there would be no need to come up with an unnecessary bill for the Safe Banking Act. So it's like, if you just legalize it, then you don't have to worry about piecemealing all these additional bills, which we know takes forever to do and is unnecessary effort in tax dollars. If all you did was just say, hey, we legalize it at the federal level, it kills so many birds with one stone. It's actually a lot simpler to do it that way.
Absolutely.
Is that what they're actually trying to do, though?
I mean, I think the reality of what we're seeing right here is that safe banking, whether you have safe banking or the bill that we're looking at right now with what's been introduced by Schumer, either way, it faces a lot of the same barriers. And I think that the thinking of the strategy behind it is that we might as well try and get as much as we can if we can do it. There's other considerations here as well, which is that Schumer is likely threatened in his next election cycle by candidates who are further to the left of him, and particularly in his state, are calling for more extreme action. So he's trying to protect his position here by going to a larger bill than just safe banking. But there's also the consideration that, regardless of what the bill actually contains, it's going to be an uphill battle to actually get the votes necessary to get this through the Senate. And so either way, they need to at least try and get as much as they can with the political capital that they're going to have to spend on this bill. And it would be a much bigger win for them as a party and for him as a speaker to actually win this outright instead of win this piecemeal. And I think that's a large part of the strategy here.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Great point.
I mean,
it's going to happen, right? It's going to happen.
It is going to happen.
When is it? When do you? What's your take, Matt? Like, when do you think? If you were a betting man, Keith, I think said a decade. That we're still looking at, some sticky ground. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I was going off projections, 5 years ago, 8 years ago, and it's right now. It's within the next 2-3 years. I think it's going to happen. You look at, in the next 3 years, there's going to be another election. And I hate to say this, but it's always, a political thing. Why are we doing it? Well, really for money, for banking, right? It's you have this. The feds will accept your money. You just have to do it a tricky way where the banks aren't. They don't want to get involved. So as soon as we allow that, I think it's inevitable. It's a good thing, And I still believe we live in the greatest country in the world. There's a lot of things wrong. There's a lot of problems we got, but it's still better than anywhere else in the world, in my opinion. So are we going to do it? Yeah, and we'll work through it, just like the California laws. But you look at the heartache on the small guys. Like, we changed the laws in California more than the FDA changes all of their laws.
Yeah.
In just one quarter compared to what they do over a decade. So it's like, how do you build a business around that? How do you scale on something like that? It makes it really difficult. So those are the struggles I think that we're going to face. The stigma. I loved how you said that too, Keith. Like, you think the stigma on cannabis is bad, and you're going to get people intoxicated driving, because they didn't have access to it, or pretty much anybody that wanted to try cannabis, I feel like, has tried cannabis at this point now, especially in California. Maybe not throughout the country, but, no studies have been done. So as these studies start to happen, you're going to get even more stigma, whether it's good or bad, and controversy, which for the legacy market, myself included, right, the connoisseurs, it's going to make it even tougher to operate, or tougher to get that artisan product, or exactly what I need based off the THC level.
So Irish, which is he's down there in the audience and he can't come up because it's early in Australia right now, but he said January 1st, 2023. That's what he's claiming. He's claiming in the next year and 5 months, we're going to see massive movement. I mean, you are seeing country by country flip. Thailand, which is like, I had a friend go to prison for some hash that he carried with him, is now a legal country to smoke weed, And so as we make laws here, this is, I think, the biggest impact. And I think maybe this is something we haven't really discussed yet, which is whatever the U.S. does amplifies throughout the rest of the world, especially in areas that there is massive drug transactions taking place. Like, let's just say between us and Venezuela or Colombia or anywhere south of Mexico, and the amount of cocaine that comes in through those areas. As we legalize things as a country and deschedule them, it also causes ripple effects throughout the world, which does impact the economy in these other countries. And I think that's where you're going to see it's going to be a shift of wealth. I mean, we've already seen it in the state of California. I live up in the Central Valley area, Santa Cruz, and you look at Salinas and Chular and Greenfield and how much business is being done down there and how much weed is being grown in those valleys. that was a desolate area. I mean, it was primarily agriculture and really a couple cut flower businesses that were left, and now you literally go in everywhere, and it's all those cut flower businesses that have left are now being occupied by growers. So I think it's definitely a hot potato in so many different factions that it's whatever happens, let's just say, the ramifications are certain to be unknown, and we'll be on the other side of it going, whoa, never thought that would have happened. Never thought that would have taken place on the back of that. So that's one of the things I think oftentimes we're not thinking about as we start to look towards legalization federally.
Yeah, your level of entry is so high now, though, right? So,
Yes.
and I look at, I've been in cannabis in California for like 16 years, and everybody that owned a brand during the 215 days, right, if they still own one, in getting a license, they've sold, right? Most of them, I'd say a large percentage, right? So it's, what is that level of entry? Can somebody, like myself go out and start a brand? It makes it really difficult, especially as you add, federal legalization on top of it. It's going to make it really hard for some of these guys. Anybody should be able to throw a hemp plant out in front of their house, right? Or in front of their hotel for, less of a carbon footprint, right?
Yeah.
There's all kinds of use cases on what we should be doing here. And, it's just that level of entry is going to be, the bar is going to rise.
So real quick, we're about halfway in-ish. We've got about 20 minutes left on the hour, and we have some people sitting down there. If anybody wants to jump up or add their 2 cents, just raise their hand and, or do whatever, and we'll jump you up and, let you have a couple moments on stage. We're not really too picky. We want everybody's opinions, and the whole point here is to kind of utilize Clubhouse as a roundtable of discussion. So I was hoping, Rob, that you would jump up, because if you're the Cannagar guy, love your product, man. Welcome to the stage, Rob.
Hey,
Hi, Rob.
Hey, guys.
What up, dude?
What's going on? So I missed the first part. I mean, just going off the title of the room, I obviously have the gist of it, but what have I missed?
Everything. I'm just
Everything.
I mean, we're just kind of circling, I hate to say the drain, but literally circling the drain on what does it look like for the feds to legalize weed. Schumer came out, popped off a bill or some legislature to kind of move that along, and it seems fairly DOA, on the Senate, right? But I think in the gist of things, we're trying to figure out, like, what does a post legalization federally look like, and how do you plan for it, and what's the fallout and what's the benefit?
So, interestingly enough, I was in a room last night and we were talking about the change they're trying to make to Prop 64 here in California. And I'm a 215 guy myself, right? I had a dispensary back from 09 to 12. Was in the what do we call the legacy market for years and years before that, and have kind of bounced around the industry since then. And so what I've seen in dealing with it both locally and then on the state side, matter of fact, my attorney George Moll is one of the authors of 64, right? So I've kind of seen it, from its inception through our current version of it. And what everyone's
gotta love George Moll, man.
Love George. He's salt of the earth, that guy. I love that. For a lawyer, man, he's a great guy. Say what you want about lawyers, but I love George. So yeah, he's a dear friend as well as represents me when needed. And so what I was everyone last night was kind of talking bad on 64, which I'm technically I'm one of those people, but what I brought up to them, and this kind of speaks to the bigger picture of how we get to federal legalization, right? I think that we have to have these state by state moves like 64, so we can identify where the shortcomings are, right? It's a time thing, right? We have to, just like back in '96, we get 215 passed, and I'm one of those people who I'm a recipient of the gaps and the loopholes with 215. Right? I made a great living off of working within the 215 realm. Then we get 64, and it poses a whole new list of potential loopholes and gaps in the legislation that allow people to take advantage of and exploit, right? So in order, I think, for the feds, for us to have a successful federal legalization push, we have to kind of go through these state by state measures, like 64, like what OMA's doing out in Oklahoma, like what they're doing in Nevada. and kind of learn from it and see where the abuses happen, right? Because the abuses happen by people within our industry. They happen by the investors on the outside looking at it, come inside and take advantage. And then obviously they happen on the governmental side with overtaxation, overregulation. So I think that we do want federal legalization, but we want it the right way where it benefits everybody involved and not just the rich guys or not just the government. Where we started having, like, the argument last night was about the new legislation that they're trying to put forth here in California, which kind of breaks up the bigger organizations, right? The people that are stacking 2,000 licenses together and have hundreds of acres of cultivation. Which, me personally, no offense to those people who are financially invested in that, but I'm highly against that. Like cannabis should be like wineries, right? It should be small batch craft cannabis, right? Otherwise,
Aw, damn.
you get a market full of dog shit of just $2 chuck all across the board, and we've gone so far away from what us as industry people strive for, which is just like exotic, perfect terpene profile, high THC, everything right about the plant, to this fucking budget, fucking run of the mill, just trash cannabis. So where do we want to be as an industry? Do we want to be with the big Walmarts, or do we want to be with the little family-owned produce stores? Like, so I don't know. Like I said, I think it's just a matter of a time thing where we pass these different bills and this different legislation that allows for legalization, and then we have to let some time go by and see where the fuck ups occur, and then right the ship from there. And so it's a long process, but I do believe that long term we do need federal legalization just to keep our people out of prison and people losing their livelihood. And that's my take.
I want to ask a quick question, if I may. Do you think we're better off post 215 and 64, or do you think we missed something there?
There's all kinds of things that were missed, but that's what I'm saying, is it takes this amount of time to go by to identify where the fuck ups are. 215 was way too lax, and like I said, I benefited greatly from the lax rules of 215. So does it need to be?
We lost your Rob.
All right, yeah, people keep trying to call me, but there's right. So 215 was far too lax and far too open for abuse, right? Where 64 is too restrictive in some areas because of over taxation, and they kind of, people don't get a clue. These are, they force everybody to cheat, right? Like I don't want to say it on an open platform like this, but they force everybody involved to cheat, right? And that's not cool. That's not cool. So we had to find the middle ground, right? We had to find, how do we make it so that the little guy can still, thrive, and the big guys can play also, but it doesn't, not at the expense of the little guy. And then of course, shaking the government by their shoulder and being, look, dude, if you tax us to death, we're just going to cheat anyway, because how you think we got here? Fuck you guys. So don't be greedy. There's enough to go around for everybody. Let's find a reasonable method to where everybody can win, and not you just like pandering to your cronies who are putting money in your pocket to give them access to licenses that other people can't get. So we have to, like I said, we have a long way to go. So 64 sucks, but it's better in some respects and it's worse in other respects. So I don't know. This is a 12-hour conversation. I'm condensing into 3 minutes of jabbering.
Dude,
you know what I mean?
Appreciate the knowledge, because I think in order to really get anywhere, we do need to have people be willing to speak their mind and take the risk. We just invited Irish to the floor. It's going to be taken over by him now.
Go for it.
Go Irish.
Oh, good morning, guys. Sorry, I was waiting for the wife to wake up so I didn't get a divorce before 9 a.m. She's awake now, so it's still before 9 a.m. I'm not divorced, so we're winning. I'm just making a cup of tea. I'll come back in a minute, guys.
No worries. I think to Rob's point, though, I think, with progress becomes failure, right? And with failure becomes corrections. And I guess the question that I would still have is, like, how does that progress take place? How do those corrections take place? And is there anybody really willing to make those corrections once they get those laws passed? I mean, one of the things I talk to, I'm pretty heavily involved locally in the political level, and I helped a county supervisor get elected. And then I asked him, I'm like, is there ever any sunsets on any of the crap that you put into play, or does it just live in perpetuity? And we kind of have that problem where we just keep layering laws on top of laws on top of laws on top of laws. At what point do we strip those away and kind of say, okay, we're taking this away and we're going to do this now? Like, I don't know if I've seen that yet with 64. Granted, it's only 3 years in, but, you know, there's definitely some really big flaws that cause a lot of problems for people to potentially grow, especially the smaller ones.
So I've seen something interesting actually in the last year, that a lot of good people who worked in the cannabis industry are now going over to regulatory agencies. And I truly feel that this is gonna help change a lot of things as well, because it's the good people who have the experience in the industry and they actually want to, you know, affect that and make that change. So, you know, different committees, different regulatory bodies, all of that. So there are a number of people, good people, who are now getting in, who are trying to drive that change. So, you know, at least that's happening too. So at least maybe we can tip the scales down the line.
You know, I think the reality for our industry, just like any other, is that you're always going to deal with someone who's breathing down your neck, someone who's trying to eat your lunch, and someone who's trying to get involved in things that they don't necessarily know or understand. And the only way that we can block off the negative effects of things like that is, you know, continued advocacy. There's not like a point in time that we reach where we're finally just okay and safe and we don't need to worry about it anymore. You know, we're going to have to continually push for a regulatory landscape that, you know, continues to preserve the things that we hold near and dear, you know, as a culture, as an industry, and as individuals. And that may sound exhausting, but it is the reality of the world and the system that we live in. And I think, like, going back to Rob's point, you know, how do you prevent something like, you know, the decrease in quality that you see in an industry where everything's flooded with $2 chuck? I mean, you know, with legalization and with more legitimacy out there, you're going to have to put up active protections for people who are actually producing quality. I mean, the same way that you see in French wines and AOC, you know, you need an appellation for things like cannabis to ensure guarantees of quality, guarantees of origin. You know, all of these things need to be fought for to maintain, again, the quality and the continuity of the culture that we care for. That has to be fought for over time.
Absolutely. And
well, I think.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, I think, you know, part of the problem of, you know, Danny, when it comes to laws is, one, you know, most of these politicians, and Sarah, you kind of hit upon it, you know, with people that have been in the industry going over to the regulatory side, is that, you know, these individuals, they have no clue about the industry. They're just making laws. Some of these individuals are actually, you know, taking time to get somewhat knowledgeable, or they have lobbyists in their ears with regards to, you know, how they're shaping some of these laws. But then you have other instances where a lot of them are just putting laws into place that absolutely make no sense. A prime example of that would be just looking at the state of Georgia. So Georgia's medical program is like pretty much non-existent, but they have laws in the books to where you know, they allow for low THC oil up to 5%, and I think you can. They've yet to issue licenses, but they're only going to issue 6 licenses for the entire state. In addition to that, 2 licenses for 2 universities. As it stands now, there are somewhere between 14,000 and 19,000 registered patients in the state of Georgia. Georgia has either the 8th or the 10th largest population statewide in the United States. Now, from a business perspective, those laws makes absolutely no sense. So, I mean, you have business entities that are, you know, getting in place, you know, vying for those licenses in anticipation of legalization, you know, making the assumption that, you know, the product offering will eventually open up. But from a business standpoint, you know, most consumers of cannabis, whether it be for adult use or, you know, medical purposes, they're not signing up for 5% THC oil. And then I don't even know, you know, what the inventory turn is on low THC oil. I don't know how often, you know, people are selling that stuff or using it for that to even be 6 entities to exist to service a total of 19,000 people throughout the entire state. And so when you have like these states with these restrictive laws, limited licenses, and different things like that, once federal legalization hits, those states are going to get crushed by guys like that are in California, Oregon, and in the state of Washington that have this surplus that they're just waiting to unleash onto other states and just flood the market. And so it's one of those things of, as we move forward towards federal legalization, even, if they do it piecemeal, state by state, and it eventually gets to the point where, so many states are legal, but yet it's illegal at the federal level, where it's just essentially legal. The states that are not being progressive or receptive to cannabis legalization are really going to be hurt, or they're going to be hurt from the local resident standpoint. And so I think, it just all depends, the states that will thrive will be the ones that are actually receptive to change and are embracing cannabis and are willing to listen to the people in the state. But, for the states and, even at the federal level where, individuals are still, holding on to that stigma and are anti-cannabis, they're going to suffer.
That's a great point. I don't think anybody brought up today, moving product or brands, let's say in California or Michigan or wherever, moving into Georgia, right? So you might not be able to move product across state lines, and I'm pretty sure that that's not going to be allowed for a while, but it could be if these states allow it. It's going to be up to each individual state, I feel like, right? But the equipment, I definitely got the equipment. I definitely got all the IP. I possibly might have some staff and the marketing, and so it's I think very easily a reality of what you're talking about.
But to that point, it comes into question of, all right, so I know, some with alcohol, you can't legally mail alcohol. And then some states won't ship to certain states, with regards to wine and things like that. So now you run the risk of, is sending cannabis or mailing cannabis across state lines, is that on somebody's radar? It may or it may not be. So if it's not, what's stopping somebody, once federal legalization occurs, what's stopping somebody in Georgia or South Carolina or Tennessee from just ordering cannabis from California or Oregon, or having a buddy that's out in California and Oregon mailing it to them? Because you can definitely, once it's legal at the federal level, hop on a plane or a train and fly to a legal state and bring as much back as you want. So, you can be against legalization all you want, but once it hits at the federal level, it can legally be in your state, and people will find ways to bring it back in large quantities.
Yeah, and I'm curious how the feds are going to regulate medical, right? Because if I say medical, I could ship wherever I want to another medical person and through the U.S. mail, right? So
you can't do that right now?
Not right now, but in California I can to another medical. So I don't know about interstate, but there's definitely going to be some loopholes around the medical, just like we faced with Prop 215 in California.
Absolutely. So we have about 5 minutes left or about maybe not even that, 5 minutes left. Irish, did you want to add a last little bit before we jump?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, guys. Sorry about that. It was just first thing in the morning, and I didn't want to, die. So, made a cup of tea. I'm out in the bunker, medicated and dedicated now. Had my wake and bake. Great conversation. Hi, Matt. Hi, Sarah. Hi, everyone.
Hey, Irish.
Man, this is a killer conversation. Yeah, I was back channeling. I was going to say backdooring Danny. That didn't sound right at all. I was back channeling Danny.
That's next week.
Saying, that's how.
No, there's a chat function. In case nobody knows, on Clubhouse, there's actually a chat function now. You can chat with people. So
I saw that.
Irish was sending me chats. That's just to clarify it. Backdoor in Australia, chats in America. But go forward.
Yeah, and I was just listening to all that talk, and it was amazing. Like I was just obviously messaging Danny saying, I don't know if you guys were aware of that big drug bust with that Anom phone, and over there I think it was called Operation Trojan Shield, and over here it was called Operation Ironside, where they took down all like this massive syndicate of drugs. And since that point, it was like the Australian Federal Police working with the American feds, and that's what brought the thing. Now they're talking about forming some kind of international body that's going to help regulate cannabis globally. So they're going to be talking directly to the federales, talking to everybody to make sure that the federal government can make international decisions, if that makes sense.
That's interesting. I mean, we can't even get our shit together on a state-by-state basis, so I don't know how an international thing will happen.
But that kind of does, when he first sent that post to me, I was like, whoa. And then I was like, it kind of makes sense. We're moving towards more of a global market. We have been for a while, a more global currency component. Like maybe they're saying we're just going to jump to an international level and incorporate one set of rules for the entire country or for the entire planet and deal with it on a regulatory basis in that faction. Maybe that's a possibility. That would take a lot of people getting along, and I don't know if that really happens all that often in politics.
I think it's more going to be like a directing report body. So, like, obviously in Australia, it's a little bit different here. I'm seeing in particular, like trades coming through with Israel and stuff like that. So there's all trade deals going on. So there needs to be some cooperation globally with all these departments because they don't talk to each other. They're all boxed off. So absolutely. I feel like just with that bust, and then seeing what we're doing here, and these talks with Israel about forming almost what's that? Is it NATO or something? What's that group body called?
NATO.
Yeah, NATO, but a weed NATO.
A weed NATO type thing.
Not to be confused with Sharknado.
I know. I was going to say sounds like a giant tornado.
Oh, I'm totally watching Sharknado today.
Watch Sharkadelic. There's a bit on Aptos, which is my backyard here, where Snoop Dogg talks about the great white sharks that we have. We have quite a population of them right now out here. Anyways, not to change the subject. I think those are all interesting tidbits to kind of close our conversation, Irish, on what could be coming down the pipe. Is there an international piece? Maybe that's something that we talk about in the near future. But just want to say thank you to everybody for taking the time to listen to us and participate. It's been pretty educational. I mean, there's a lot of different facets that I've learned today about, how we can go about it and what the potential other side looks like. But do Sarah or Matt or anybody else have anything that they'd like to say before we jump off?
No, I mean, I love hearing everyone's thoughts about it. It'll be interesting to see what happens.
Matt, want to close us up?
No, thanks for joining. This is also on, Facebook Live?
Facebook, Twitch, YouTube.
For a replay, too.
Yeah, you can watch it later. And we'll be back again probably this Thursday, it looks like, at 3 o'clock Pacific. So, Irish, if you can join us, let us know. I'll make sure to add you in on the Zoom as well. It's always a good look to have the Stormtrooper head on the Zoom.
I'm trying, man. I am so sorry, Danny. I am literally, we've gone from every world disaster, COVID, floods, bushfires. We're in a lockdown now. It is nuts. So here we've got army and military. So we're just navigating our day by day, and hopefully, I'll be in. Send me the invite. If I'm there, I can be there, bro.
Awesome. I will. I'll put you on the list as a host, and I'll also make sure you get the Zoom.
No worries. If I'm not there, I apologize in advance. The cops will probably just lock us
up. All right, guys. Have a great rest of your week, and we'll see you Thursday.
Bye.
Love you guys.
Recording stopped.